Welcome to What's Left, a weekly political discussion challenging the mainstream left. I'm Eduardo Arca with Andy Lipson, and today we have our guest for tonight to discuss the week's topic in the headlines, which is the Oakland teachers' strike. And it will be more of a thread, I feel like, of what is happening since we interviewed the LA teachers on their strike, and now we are interviewing an Oakland teacher for the Oakland teacher strike. That is a phenomenon that is happening as we move on into this year, and from last year, from the red wave onto now, just labor movement. Yes, so let's have Andy. Do you want to have...
Well, this is Jimmy Barbuto.
Yes.
And I know, I just met Jimmy in the last 2 weeks. I'm at Mission High School here in San Francisco, and he is at Skyline High School. We had in Oakland, and our school adopted their school as a supporter, trying to support them. And I've gotten to know him and some of the other activists at Oakland, and I've just been super impressed with the organizing that they've done at their school. I'm super impressed with the Oakland strike, and Jimmy, I just wanted him to talk about his experiences there, and we have lots of questions about how they feel about what they're doing, so I'm just really grateful, Jimmy, for you to take this time to do this interview and to educate us, but also anybody who's listening to this about what's happening there. Maybe first, though, because I'm just getting to know you, maybe you could say something just about your background, anything, teaching, just anything that you think is important to
basic things.
Yeah, for us to know about you.
Yeah, so I come from Boston, Massachusetts originally. My ancestors are from southern Italy, from Calabria, and they immigrated to the United States, over a pretty long period of time, and also have family from Argentina and Chile and some other places in Latin America and Canada. And so, I come from Boston and just outside of Boston growing up, and I went to public schools and became a teacher right when I was 22, right after high school. I'd already done student teaching, which is a lot easier to do that in Massachusetts, but there's very few jobs there, so I wanted to teach high school social science, and there were very few jobs there, so I came out to Oakland when I was 24 actually, I believe. I turned 25 in Oakland, and came to teach in the neighborhood Eastmont at a middle school for a couple of years, and then the recession happened after that, and I became a case manager because there were very few teaching jobs. And the school I taught at actually was one of the small schools that came out of the Small Schools Initiative funded by Bill Gates called Explore, and then it was closed during the older wave of school consolidations because at the time they said it was in its third year of program improvement. It wasn't meeting benchmarks, and then they just weren't sending any resources to the school. They had some of the most challenged students, and I wouldn't say they weren't challenging, but they had so many challenges going on in their lives that it was just an unbelievable struggle for those students. And the district was clearly defunding and undermining that campus. I felt like, well, I should actually back up and say we were under state receivership. I always forget this. And the state was pushing, like the network superintendent at the time, I don't remember her name, it was so long ago, to destabilize the school, and she was threatening to close it. And then my position got consolidated because of low projected enrollment, and which is a story you hear over and over again at these small schools. Then it was closed, and then a few years later, it became a charter school.
Right.
And so I did some case management work because it was 2008. The economy collapsed when my position got consolidated, and I was frankly just a little bit frustrated, and I just wanted to focus on kids, not dealing with school politics. So I worked case managing foster youth, and then case managing homeless youth in downtown Oakland for about 5 years, and then came back to teach at Skyline. And I've been there for, I want to say, 5 years or 5 or 6 years now. It's hard to keep track nowadays. But I've taught high school social science there, U.S. history, world history, government economics, and now I teach principles of teaching and learning, which is a senior CTE class, and I teach U.S. history, and I also teach I'm a teacher of record for dual enrollment for psychology and abnormal psychology. So a professor comes in from Merritt College in Oakland, a community college, and teaches the class, and I support with classroom management. So, and then I'm also a program director for the Education and Community Health Pathway at Skyline. So it's like a college and career readiness pathway. So I do a lot of work with like grants and grant reporting and budgeting and spending money and buying supplies and planning field trips and stuff like that for the field trip.
And in any way,
can I just commend you for your work? And I will state as well that how teachers wear so many hats for working in the public schools, and I think that your extensive background and your your history is thank you for your service. Just as teachers, both of you continue to work in the schools. I have long quit, but but this is more than basic, and I appreciate it. So
thank you so much.
Yeah.
And I mean, I've just seen you as kind of an activist. Can you say something about that history as either a union activist or an activist? Maybe you just started this month. I don't know, but
yeah. Well, I mean, my father has been in the Bricklayers and Allied Craftsmen Union. He's been in for over 50 years, I believe now, maybe even 52, in the local chapter in Boston. I come from a family of educators. My maternal grandmother, she was actually growing up in poverty during the Great Depression in Boston, and in the neighborhood of Roxbury, and a nun. She lived near the cathedral on it's called Mission Hill in Boston, and a nun paid for her entrance fee to go to college, to go to the normal school, which is now UMass Boston, which is also where I went. And so she got to go to school, and it kind of saved her life. And her younger sister got to go to college too. And so my grandmother, who helped raise me, was really into, obviously she was a teacher for many years. She taught typing. And then I had a number of teachers or relatives who were teachers. I actually have maybe close to 15 relatives who are teachers, at least, or have been teachers, including most of my cousins. And I have a number of cousins are or were teachers in places like Anchorage, San Luis Obispo, Hartford, Connecticut. One of my cousins, she's an administrator in Boston. We won't hold that against her, but she taught in Missouri somewhere, Kansas City, I think. I've had some of my great aunts were teachers too. My great aunt Genevieve had to move to Manchester, New Hampshire, because at the time Italians weren't allowed to become teachers in Boston. You could only become a teacher if you're Anglo or Irish. And my great aunt, actually, Ellie, she moved out to Oakland or San Francisco and wound up getting married and moving to the East Bay in the 1960s and 70s, was a secretary at Castlemont High School in East Oakland, in deep East Oakland. And she was there when the school was getting integrated. So in the 60s and 70s as a secretary to the dean. So a lot of people, my mom even has an elementary ed background, but she couldn't afford to become a teacher because she was a single mother. So she decided to become a secretary instead. So my sister works in higher ed. So it's like, that's kind of like the trade. If you're not a construction worker in my family, like my dad's family are all construction workers, my mom's family are mostly educators.
Right.
So my mom got me books for Christmas and oranges. I think one year we got a Nintendo, but it was mostly books and socks and oranges. And so like that was kind of the message. Like we weren't allowed to have cable, which was hard to enforce because my mom wasn't home a lot of the time. Like
Right.
she expected us to be reading. We didn't have a lot of money, but we did have always access to books and like educational things. So, and I actually, because my mom was doing like, I think she was doing the welfare to work program as a single mom in the early 90s, and she was taking classes to get her teaching credential in elementary ed. And when I'd be out from school and she would have school, like if I was sick or if I had a break and she didn't, I'd have to go to classes with her. So I'd actually go to the elementary ed classes when I was like a first grader. Like, I remember sitting there like with a sore throat when I was a little kid, like watching the professors teach people how to become teachers.
Wow.
And how did you develop your activism, if I may? How did you?
Okay, so activism is another. I mean, my grandmother, the maternal grandmother, she identified as a communist from the old left. Although when you talk to her, she maybe was more like in line with like a Eugene Debs type of social democrat, but I don't know, she was probably somewhere between that. I wouldn't say she was an actual Marxist, but she was pretty feisty. She didn't take guff. She had a really intense class consciousness. She cared very deeply about economic justice and civil rights, and spent a lot of time talking to me when I was a little kid about racism and racial inequities and the Jim Crow era and slavery, making sure, and the maltreatment of immigrants, maltreatment of people for different religious backgrounds. My grandfather was really interested in the environment, and so I kind of from them, and then one of my aunts was one of the founders of the anti-reproductive technology movement. She was going to Black Panther rallies in the 60s. This is my aunt Genevieve Correa, who, if you're a second wave feminist, you might have even heard of her. And she wrote articles for feminism that were getting published by the New York Times, most famously an op-ed called "I Have a Motherland." She wrote 3 books, including like The Mother Machine. There was a doctor who was inseminating at a fertility clinic who was inseminating women with his own sperm, like thousands of them. And she which is pretty famous. Most people know more about that than her in North Carolina, and she exposed that as a journalist. And she traveled around the world. She kind of wrote the book about how women were being killed and abused through in vitro fertilization and other technologies. And then she wrote the first book about how the HIV epidemic was impacting women around the world. So like I grew up with that. She was actually going on like Oprah and Phil Donahue and like even Jerry Springer when he had a real talk show. And like going around, like making the rounds on like Fresh Air with Terry Gross, and like speaking about those things when I was a little kid. And so like in general, and like my parents are very pro-union. They pay a lot of attention to politics. Like one of my first memories about like politics was waiting in line with my mom to go vote for Jesse Jackson in 1988 in the Democratic. I don't remember if it was the Democratic primary or the actual election, because I think he was in both, one as an independent and one. So it's like I grew up with civil rights and social justice, and my grandmother was also a pretty hardcore Catholic, and she was really she had a liberation theology kind of Catholic perspective. So like the Catholic left was really important to her. So
let's maybe get to the that's just a family of teachers, construction workers, and activists. Let's get to the strike. You've probably had to say these things, but can you just say what some of the? I'm going to ask this question: what are some of the issues that the strike are around? But then maybe also say what are of those issues? What are the ones that really resonate most to you, or what really is at the heart of this for you around the strike? So the general issues and what for you is really important.
Okay. And so here I am. I'm sitting in this rent control department in downtown Oakland. I'm so lucky to have because of my age. But when I look at some of these, when the teacher turnover I have to witness every year, and the inability of our administrators in our district to compete in the labor pool because of what we pay, especially around like math and science teachers, so I'm going towards teacher pay right now, but not because of me, because no matter what, I'm resourceful and crafty, and I don't care about money, and I'm never leaving the students and families of East Oakland, but I see how hard it is to find and retain teachers, and for those teachers who want to work here, particularly those born here, to be able to find a way to live here. And the teachers, like there was a teacher today, she'd never been to downtown Oakland. She commutes from so far away until today. She was like, wow, so this is downtown Oakland to me. I was like, oh yeah. So we have one here. So we need teachers who want to, if they want to be able to live here and not have to commute far away. And to get to know the community and join the community. Because to me, that's one of the most rewarding parts of my job. But it's for the younger people especially, or people with families, it's getting increasingly impossible for that to be a reality. So I'm not speaking from my own self-interest here. I'm okay. I'm already here. But for the people that are not, that have not been hired yet, or that want to be able to stay or hanging on by a thread, or living in their parents' basement if they're lucky to have a parents' basement to live in, you know? And these young teachers that I see just not really giving a damn. They're just, this is their only hope, is this strike, to be able to live here because of the extreme cost of living in Oakland and the over 30% price increase in rent in the last 5 years since our last contract. Just that alone, just the cost of rent, not even considering owning a home at this point.
Right. Just
talking about renting a one bedroom or even a room. We have a teacher who got sick of having to share a bathroom, so now he commutes here from Fremont. So he could find a room to rent that he could afford with a bathroom.
Right.
His own bathroom, so he doesn't have to. That's all he's hoping for at this point.
Right.
So, so that's demand number one. Is it okay if I just go through the demands?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, because they all are relevant and resonant with me. Number two, class sizes. Recently, I've seen at my school site incredible increase in my class sizes. They used to be a little bit more reasonable, and I think that's because they're trying to consolidate schools so they can then close more schools and then charterize them.
Right.
And when you have the degree of intergenerational trauma and poverty and needs that our students have, they need more FaceTime with the teacher and one-on-one questions to be asked. And that is so much more difficult when there's more students. I know I'm preaching to the choir here. The more people, the students feel the stress, I feel the stress. They know I'm trying to get to them sometimes, especially I do a lot of individual research projects with my students, and the students need one-on-one check-in time. And also, when you have students who have struggled with adverse experiences from their early childhood, that I just find that they need less stimulation to be able to focus than some other people, because it overwhelms their nervous system. And because they're more easily, I think, triggered, and when there's more people in the room and it's inevitably going to be a little bit more louder, just background noise alone, it's harder for our students. So, and our students already struggle with things like attention span. We at our school site, we also have the highest population of special ed students with IEPs than any other school site in the whole northern half of the state.
Wow.
And so, of course, those students need more help, and I'm seeing an explosion in class size just in the last year I have the biggest senior class I've ever had in over 5 years. And same thing with my dual enrollment class was huge this fall. It was like 36 kids or 35.
Holy smokes!
And
wow.
So that's demand number 2.
And you're talking about those being. You're talking though within that 36 group. Included within that are kids with all these specialized needs as well.
Yeah.
And even kids who haven't been identified as having needs. They also have their trauma and all those people in the same place.
And I did a survey, and I have 19, last year I did a survey, I did one this year. I forget the exact number for this year, but I remember because I repeated this so many times. Last year I had 19 languages spoken in my classes. And so I'm increasingly having more and more students who are trilingual, especially kids from the Philippines and from Guatemala. Who are trilingual, and then we do have a significant, but not as much as other school sites. We have a significant group of students who are English language learners who are getting into higher grades, still being considered English language learners, and then lots of long-term English language learners. And those students deserve, and because they're coming from so many different linguistic perspectives, even though I know some Spanish, there's so many other students that speak a language in an alphabet that I don't know or read from a different direction than I do. Like, for example, lots of students who speak Arabic, and there isn't even a Duolingo, so I can try to learn a little bit of Tongan. Lots of Tongan students, a lot of Arabic-speaking students. I am starting to pick up a couple Tongan words, but at least the cuss words, But so we have the language needs, we have the special needs, we have the emotional needs of students, and for one teacher to be able to meet all those needs in a large class I will do my best every day. That's all I can say about that. I'm not going to say it's impossible because I can't say that to myself, but I do my best every day, and I just try to stay patient with myself and everyone else. And until we can solve that crisis. And then I'll move to demand 3. Demand 3 right now is it's about support for students. So, for example, we are mandated by the lawsuit that we settled. There's a voluntary resolution with the NAACP and I believe the American Civil Liberties Union. Oh, that was my cat. I'm sorry. For an incredibly disproportionate suspension rate years ago for African American and Latino males. And
say this piece one more time. I'm sorry. Can you say this piece? Yes.
We had a high disproportionate suspension rate for African American and Latino males, and there was a lawsuit by the NAACP and by what was the other group, the American Civil Liberties Union, I believe, and then we entered into a voluntary resolution to adopt restorative justice. And so we have a restorative justice program that we're still building and working to perfect, and we're nowhere near there yet, but that program is currently on the chopping block. We have really poor ratio of students to nurses. At Skyline, we have 2 incredibly talented nurses who are able to meet the needs of a huge student population at our school. It's one of the biggest schools in the city.
About 1,500 students,
what?
right? About 1,500 students.
Yeah, and at the beginning of the year, it might be at 17. And there's been years, I believe it's been almost 2,000.
Wow.
It's a little bit down right now because of attrition to charters and displacement of some of the public school students. And the administrative turnover, and I believe it will go back up again soon. But our nurses, and they have to leave campus to do like diabetes checks and go support other schools all the time. And so the nurses situation, the nursing situation, we have amazing nurses at our school, and they work so hard. And I can't imagine that there are some schools that don't have a nurse there all the time. That's just beyond me of how you could function. Without that. We also, counselors, our counselor caseload, it has improved in my time. Like the year before I came to Skyline, we actually didn't have any counselors at all. They were having the APs do all that work as a way to save money. and which was a
APs
disaster.
is assistant principals.
The assistant principals were doing that work, which was a disaster, I guess. I think they did their best to meet those needs, but we went back to having counselors. The ratios have been getting better, but it's still not enough. And we have amazing counselors, and they will be able to do so much more for our kids because their needs are so high. And we've done a lot of work to improve our caseloads, but there's more work to do because of the level of need of these kids.
Yeah. Yep.
If that makes sense.
Yep.
And so student support, and so those are some examples. And our last demand, school closures. I've seen the pain. I've been through 3 school closures in my career. 1 in Oakland, and my first 2 years in Boston. And I see the pain that it causes communities when the local neighborhood school closes. I see how the fabric of that neighborhood that has already been disinvested in for generations is ripped apart, and that friendships and relationships are broken apart, and it re-traumatizes and re-triggers the people. And instead, we need to reinvest in those schools so that they can be quality places to attract everyone in the neighborhood so people don't have to travel far. Like, it's a luxury. Parents need to live, especially for elementary schools and middle schools, parents need to live right near there so they can get there if they want to be able to. Like, there should be a quality school in your neighborhood so a parent can get over there and ensure that the kid is safe, especially when the kid is little, especially when we have problems like sex trafficking in East Oakland. Like, for example, closing down routes. When I worked with homeless youth, many of them had been sex trafficked starting at a very young age. Wow. International Boulevard is obviously, if you know Oakland, you know that it has a reputation for being epicenter for that. And if a school is located on that boulevard and then all of a sudden the kids have to travel down that street a lot farther away, and it's harder for the parents, or maybe the parent now feels like they have to get out of work early to go pick the student up, and now they're making less money to ensure that safety. Like, and then the district is calling the chance the student to get a better school after they close their school an opportunity ticket. That, using that in that context, that word disgusts me as someone who has case managed children who've been sex trafficked and young adults, especially given the context of how, knowing that there are predators out there preying on children in our community, and that we're an epicenter in the country for that. And when the district calls that an opportunity ticket, some people that immediately popped in their head, the connotations there. Right. And I'm concerned about little kids' safety when they have to travel long distances, and who's going to bring them there? Are they going to have to walk? It's expensive. They may not be able to afford the bus. I don't know if the plan is for the district to pay for all those kids for transportation indefinitely. That sounds really expensive, too, over the course of a kid's academic career. Yep. That it's not going to long-term be cost-effective if we had to do that. So that I don't actually exactly know, but I'm concerned about safety and the stress that places on families. I want families to be able to stay in their neighborhood so they can be able to walk over and talk to their teachers when they need to, or check in and see where their kid's going after school, or go pick them up if they need to without stress, and not have to feel like they can't work as many hours as they need to. And then we have, the concern around privatization and charterization and the money that's flooding our school board races, the pressure that people are putting onto our community, the billionaire class, and the people that support them that don't have a background as educators. Likely a lot of these people I know didn't go to public schools yet, and their kids don't go to public schools yet. They feel the need to tell us how to run our community. If they want to donate money like Bill Gates did, that's fine. How about giving money to Oakland? Because we know how to use our money. Give it to the public schools. Because the problem is we don't know how to use our money. It's the problem that we need a well-funded school system. and people who live in this community know it's best here. We just need the resources, and we need to stop the disinvestment in the fabric of our community, the public school system, and the intentional undermining of the public schools in Oakland. So that's my answer.
Well, that's great. I mean, thank you.
Lots of
I mean, I could go on about charters in Oakland for a long time.
I think I also will, because your strike started last Thursday, and now you Thursday, Friday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. So it's been a full week. What would you want to say about either the experience of the strike, really anything that you think is meaningful, or what's been meaningful for you about the good, the bad, and the ugly about this?
So the experience of the strike, a couple weeks ago, I thought had I known that I would be on, this would be day 6 going into day 7, I would have been terrified. I would have thought my prediction would be I'd be terrified right now, and I'm here. Everything's okay. And this is my message to teachers in the future. If you're wondering about going on strike, it's going to be okay. Your union loves you and has your back. And your fellow workers in your community love you and have your back. And it's actually been one of the best experiences, I would say, of my life so far. That, it's one of those rare moments in your life where everything stops, business as usual stops, and you can focus on creating change for your community and for the children you work for and the families in your community, and you get to go out there. And, I feel like I'm being celebrated and validated in ways I've never been in my life. And I'm seeing that happen not just to me, but to everyone. It's uplifting. Most people, including employees in central office who have privately reached out to me, who, not like the superintendent or the school board, but even some of our school board members, 2 of them have come out on our side.
Okay.
I feel like our whole city council is on our side. Even people I've disagreed with in the past. Almost everyone in the community is on our side. I've never seen this many people. People are shouting things out to us when they see us walk around with our picket signs or sweatshirts on. And people from all backgrounds, almost everyone supports us. The outpouring of support from around the country, from family members I haven't talked to in years and old friends I haven't talked to for years. Everyone's saying, keep at it. And so I'm not afraid. We have, in our union, we have a strike fund. We have 0 interest loans available to us. And we're getting food every day on the picket line. I was even waiting in line one day. I thought I was going to have to buy this $12 salad on Monday in downtown Oakland before the rally. And a woman in front of me, she said, "Oh, you're a teacher, you're on strike? My sister's a teacher in Ohio. She's been on strike. I'll pay for that." So I didn't have to pay for the salad. So that aspect of community support and the encouragement has been overwhelming. I did not expect this. I didn't know that this was going to be a scary thing. There's been low morale on my school site the whole time I've been there. There's been a really difficult time forming community because just people.
You mean prior to the strike? You're talking about low morale. You feel like it, or
the morale was low up until a month ago at my school site.
Yeah.
The sick out started to change that. And when we started to have meetings right after we got back from winter break about planning for that, that started to change everything when we had those meetings. And then building towards the strike, we started to have all these meetings, and all of a sudden there's these meetings happening on campus union meetings where 60 or 70% of the teachers are showing up. That was unheard of. But everyone started showing up and getting to know each other and learning each other's names. It's I'm in a small learning community on my campus, and I have a tight community with them, but not the whole campus. Half the time people leave and you never learn their name or what they taught because, I think there's 130 or 40 teachers on my school site, and we've never had this level of camaraderie and support and public joy together, and just having fun, dancing, eating together. It's it's just like a block. The picket line has been like a block party in a lot of ways for teachers and students and families and community members showing up, and like people are coming from around the country. And so that part of the strike, like the planning and build up, so it requires a lot of education. There's a huge learning curve, but we're teachers. We know how to learn a ton of stuff really quick if we have to. Mm-hmm. And, there's a lot of growing pains. I haven't seen like almost no infighting among teachers. I've not really heard much negativity between like the rank and file and the union, only like tiny little things here and there. It's mostly been positive, and I feel like the union has our back. They're on our side, and they've been very good. I think because we're a smaller union, that it's possible to know a lot of people in the union and between the school sites and get to know each other really quickly. And that's been another amazing part of this. And, just like uplifting these issues and uplifting our students and the families here and the social justice travesties that are happening right here in the Bay Area, in Oakland, for these communities that are not being thought of or asked of as decisions are made, as the technology sector has swarmed and taken over and overwhelmed the Bay Area in the time that I've lived here. Mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
That's my response. I know I didn't really get into like the difficult parts of it yet.
Well, can I add a story about the thing? Because we visited your picket line twice.
Yeah.
And we went to a cafe, I think Awakenings Cafe. Mm-hmm. And we were sitting there before the rally, and then suddenly there's a salad that gets plopped down on our thing, and I thought it was that person, and they thought it was mine, and that salad just sat there for like 10 minutes, and we're like, they just gave it to us because they thought they knew we were teachers. They thought we were Oakland teachers. They were San Francisco teachers. And it turns out they were just giving salads to Oakland striking teachers. So we were like, wait, no one ordered this. They just gave it to us. And we met a woman in the BART today whose their massage parlor has been they do acupuncture, and they're giving like free massages to 5 teachers per day. Wow. So it's just like, it's just amazing.
Yeah, and like when I went to go get rain boots at Sports Basement in Berkeley, I went to 5 places because no one has rain boots at this point in the rain season. They all sent them back or sold out, and Sports Basement had a few. So I went there in Berkeley, and I was buying them. I was telling the woman what they were for in line. She's like, "Oh yeah, we donated all 8 like pop-up tents that we had still in stock to Oakland Education Association." So sorry, I'm getting emotional for a sec. Yeah. I go through the Bay Area every day. I've lived here for a while now, and I feel like I'm every day becoming less and less part of this community here as I see, the tech sector take over the Bay Area more and more each day.
Right.
And then lo and behold, to realize how much support teachers have.
Yeah.
It's kind of shocking. I didn't know this.
Yeah. And could you say what has been maybe the biggest challenge of this 5 days or so?
I mean, the biggest challenge, I think, is this mindset among people who are in positions of power that there are 2 sides to this, and that punitive actions by the state, which is controlled by a Democratic governor, a progressive Democratic governor, by most people's accounts, a state assembly and senate with super majorities of mostly progressive Democrats, supposedly. We are represented by a state superintendent now who was endorsed by California Teachers Association. We worked very hard to get him elected. We now have Linda Darling Hammond as the head of the state school board. We have the Democrats are unbelievably in power right now. For years, it made sense that Arnold Schwarzenegger and previous governors were taking a punitive approach towards OUSD. in the 90s and early 2000s. And when I first moved out here, Schwarzenegger was governor. But it doesn't make sense why we're being kept in a permanent debtor status, and why some people think this is the way it has to be. Most of our students were not alive when the financial mismanagement happened. My grandparents and my parents raised me to believe that children should not be made to suffer for the mistakes of generations past. They should be given a clean slate and given the best chance. And when we are kept in permanent debtor status, it feels to me like a form of colonialism, where Oakland, there's a book called American Babylon. It's a history of Oakland that has a colonial perspective of how the outside treats Oakland. And I feel like a lot of people don't see that in power. They don't see their role in that they're treating us the same way I think the federal government has treated, countries like Guatemala in the past, or Haiti.
Yeah.
And that this is like a third world anti-debt relief movement happening right here in an American city. And it's being maintained by Democrats who are unequivocally in power. They can't point to the Republicans and say we can't get this through. They can cancel our debt.
Right.
They don't have to punish our children, because it's not me I worry about. It's the children that are being punished. The New York Times today said $23 billion less is being spent nationally on African American students than white students, and that the average per pupil expenditure for an African American student is $2,000 less. We deserve in Oakland, instead of our leaders, it's the leaders that is the biggest challenge right now in the district and in state government and in county government. Everyone should be demanding reparations for the way Oakland's been treated for decades of civil rights abuses towards the families and students in this city, from redlining, from housing discrimination, segregation, insurance discrimination, undervaluing of homes, the inability to get loans in our community. So we need reparations in Oakland, and we need them now. And what better place to start with reparations than in our schools?
Yep.
This isn't even I'm not talking about reparations that would lead to higher teacher salaries. I'm talking about getting quality teachers for the students who deserve them, and getting supplies in the classrooms.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
So that's my challenge. And since that's a big picture thing, I would say some of the other challenges is some of the behavior of the district and some people in the community. I think the idea that some people think you can drive into a picket line and that's okay. I know we're all, I think some people panic, and that's just unacceptable, and it's very dangerous because we have children and parents and community members. It's not even just teachers, but no one should have a car aimed at them.
Yeah.
And then some of the scabs were a little bit aggressive who were coming, or strike breakers, or whatever we want to call them. The district calls them temporary substitutes, but some of them were getting a little bit rough with teachers, and I observed two incidents. And my concern is that they're provocateurs, that they're a little bit rough people getting sent to break up and kind of cause disorder.
Yeah.
You have covered a lot of our questions without even
asking
you.
Yeah.
So
I can go more in depth if you need to.
No,
I have one follow-up question. Can I do it?
Why don't you ask your question as I figure out which one you haven't answered?
Yeah. So I see how it's been transformative for you, but I've also been struck. I sense that it's been transformative for some of the people around you. Like, I'll use her name, Donna. The Picket captain I saw, and Harley, and can you just say something about what you feel like how it's changed your colleagues?
I was talking to another colleague who's been a special ed teacher, who's been in the district for 20 years, and she's like, as a veteran teacher, I think she came in right before the last strike, or the last big major strike in the 90s, and she said, she was talking about the younger teachers. She said, their generation is driving this. they're looking out at the Bay Area, and a lot of them were born here and raised here, and they're seeing that there's a threat for the Bay Area to not be for them anymore. And their energy is, I think, inspiring in ways that is impossible to even describe to some of the veteran teachers who didn't even know that this type of thing was possible. The ability of the younger teachers to use social media, to use technology, cell phones. Our last major strike, they had phone trees where you just, someone would call you at home, right, and someone would call the next person. Maybe there were some beepers involved. Internet was brand new. I think they were still calling it the information superhighway at the time. I don't think anyone knew how to use email yet, really. People are still using AOL the last time. So, we've got things like WhatsApp group chats. There's a whole, we've got ways to network with community activists using Facebook and Instagram to basically turn any experience into, we can control the media narrative if we need to, or have a huge impact on it, or counteract it. And the media is also using social media. We have these networks that are being created around the state, and people that never, young people who never knew in their life they would be in this situation right now are driving this. So, the union's driving it, and we have some veterans in the union, but the energy is coming from the young teachers, and it wasn't really predictable. And we are creating, the political framework that emerged in the late 70s that built towards Prop 13 and that led to the disinvestment in our schools, that's going away. That framework and that mentality that I think emerged out of the hyper suburbanized kind of baby boomer generation in places like Orange County, that's gone, and it's going the way of the dinosaurs. And there's a new framework where that is focused around justice and equity and sharing. That I think that older generations have a lot to learn about. I'm sorry, it's making me tear up.
No,
but we're seeing in our national politics, but really even more here, hyper focused on how the political framework is changing, and a network of teachers and families and students, those most adversely affected by those older policy decisions and the current status quo and the old way of doing things. That we're just seeing a revolution right now that someone needs, in a couple of years from now can write a book about and look back on. But right now we're in it.
How has the community been, the impact on the community that you all have, students, parents, neighbors? How have they responded?
We know each other now on a more personal level. We've had time to just talk to each other, and we know each other. And once people build community, it's going to be impossible, and build the network and the framework and just the ideas we're having, the cross-pollination, the discussions about the inequities, the discussions about the solutions to the problem and the challenges we face and the next step. And that is not going to be easily dismantled at all. And in fact, what we might be seeing is, I feel like there's going to be a lot of teachers that stay in Oakland because of what just happened.
Yeah.
Because of the relationships that are being built, that the hope that this is creating, that we don't, because a lot of times a new teacher comes in and they see how hard it is to change the system, and it burns them out right there.
Right.
1 year, 2 years, 3 years, maybe if you're lucky 5.
Yep.
And then they go on to do something else or go to a different district. And we're seeing people realizing that actually this is our district and this is our city, and we can change it, and we can make it what another district is possible. Mm-hmm. Another city is possible, and another world is possible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so you've had to fight so far for now 6 days on the line. What do you think it's going to take from your union and those of us from outside, San Francisco, San Jose, Sacramento, to really get your message and win the demands that you think, that you're fighting for? What do you think it's going to take?
I think what's happening and the momentum that's currently happening, I think it's working. That I think if the strike goes on longer, I would hope there'd be at some point another solidarity event, and hopefully, and it could involve teachers that didn't come today.
Yeah.
Because we know we all only have so many sick days and so much capital with our administrators to take time off. But I feel like if we spread that, if there's a need for that, then there is. I don't know that there will be. It's impossible to predict right now. I think that would be a need, especially if talks really broke down. Because right now it sounds like there has been there's movement in progress, even if it's moving in inches before it was not moving at all for years. And so every day it seems we're moving a few inches closer to something that we can live with. I think that the financial support, the food that's being sent over to us, the teachers that are sending us, some teachers are sending me through my Venmo account because I'm supporting with receiving funds for our school site right now, and some people are sending $10, including teachers that just went on strike in LA, which is amazing. I had a teacher this morning. I woke up to $200 in my Venmo from one person in LA.
Yeah.
Like, oh my God, that is amazing. So like the level of support, it is working right now. If it goes on longer, we might need more, but I think we need to build towards a statewide action.
Yep.
Or I don't know if a statewide strike like what happened in West Virginia. If West Virginia can do it, who are we to not do it? I mean, that map of every county except for one, and I think that last county did eventually do something of West Virginia. But if West Virginia can do it, why can't California? Is my question.
I agree.
And so I think that's going to take time. And it can go multiple ways. We can go site to site as contracts go up for negotiation in different cities. We can all support each other at different times, or we can all do it at once and we can change the whole thing. And then we need to pressure our lawmakers for so that I don't want to go towards like the grand strategy because I know you're focused on it's big picture and it's Oakland right now, right? And other cities that wind up moving towards strike, like San Ramon Valley just voted to authorize a strike. And so, which is just, 15 minutes away from our district or our city. And so this is going to keep catching fire, I think, in different districts. There's also a way to address the greater state issues, and both need to be addressed. And then we have a third layer of county issues, and everyone needs to be accountable to creating this change in how we treat our children, how we educate our children, and how we give them unconditional love and support and access to education. I was just going to close that by saying our kids deserve unconditional love, of course. No one would argue that, but they deserve unconditional access to a high-quality education, everybody.
So,
do you want to go for this one?
I just... You have covered so much.
Let's go to this and we're going to kind of wrap up. You want to go to
what lessons can you share with teachers and workers about going on strike? How can you share what you have had during these past 6 days for teachers like in San Francisco that potentially are ruminating about to strike and could empower them to think that they can do this?
Well, I mean, honestly, we've got picket lines happening right now. Come see what one looks like. We now have a lot of experience with picket lines in Oakland, so very few of us did before, and so now we do. Come see a picket line, please. Even if that means getting up really early to drive over and see one before school. I feel like someone from every school site needs to come see one. I was watching YouTube videos of picket lines. I was listening to YouTube videos of people discussing picket lines because you need to know what one looks like. Because I didn't really know what a picket line was. A real picket line. A real picket line an assertive picket line, not a passive one.
Right.
You know? That's what wins a strike. Strikes are won on the streets, and so we have the marches. And a lot of us have been in marches in the past. I have. I was involved in Occupy. I've been in climate marches and stuff like that, etc. Anti-war marches back in the Iraq War days. But come see what a picket line looks like because it's different. Come see one at a school site because it's different at a school site than if you're picketing through the Carpenters Union because you got little kids involved and stuff like that and families, and there's a lot of nuances, you know. And come see one at a school site or educate yourself on what one is and why they're so important because the picket line wins the strike. And read some books about strikes. I didn't have time to read, but I was listening. I was listening to some videos. Educate yourself. And my other thing is you're going to hear a lot of different sides of the argument. Trust your union. Trust the workers over the district. So the union has your back. The California Teacher Association. I'm not saying they're perfect organizations. If you have issues with your union, run for office in your union. Run for site rep. But your union has your back, at least in my experience. I feel like our union is very democratic in Oakland. I'm sure there's people out there that disagree with me, but I find it to be democratic. Mm-hmm. I find that my voice is heard, and I find that I have my best interests and my students' best interests. And lastly, the number one lesson is don't be afraid to go on strike.
Yep.
That strikes are the most effective tool in the workers' toolbox. I cannot say. I wish I could just repeat that 20 times.
You could go ahead and say it fucking again.
Yeah, they're powerful. They work. Why do you think so many people are afraid to go on strike? It's because they work. And, you know, the more effective you are on day one and the more ready you are, the better. But you will learn over time. You'll learn from your mistakes. And in the moment, there'll be some flashpoints when you're on the picket line, when you're in marches and rallies. Stay calm. You know, remember what your ideals are and how you would want to be treated. And don't be afraid, but stay calm. And don't take bait from people in high-stress situations. And think things through. And you will prevail. And and work on those relationships with your colleagues through that time, because that is everything. The solidarity is everything. You know, I had theory about what solidarity was before. Yep. Now I feel like I can embody it. Mm-hmm. I feel like it's in my blood. Mm-hmm. And you can only know what that is through build-up planning towards a strike, through dancing with your colleagues, getting together on the weekends through art builds and painting signs while they're blasting David Bowie and Prince in your union hall, while you're dancing on the picket lines because it's you can't chant anymore because your voices are going to go. So
but I don't think we should do lip sync competitions on picket lines.
No, electric slide is
that's
fine.
where I draw the line.
I'm iffy on the Macarena. Electric slide is fine. Maybe it's just my generation. So, but the rest of it's fine. And participate. The strike is going to be long. The more you participate, if the strike is long or one day, give it your all. Go and give it your all. We're teachers. We know how to give it our all. We work crazy hours already. Why not work crazy hours during the strike? Yep. We know how to go to work and teach one of the best lessons of the year on little sleep if we have to. If you can get good sleep, get it, but you may not at different points during the strike. You'll catch up at different times too. And give it your all. The more you give it your all, the more it will start to feel like you're winning. It really feels like we're winning, and there's so many people giving it 100%. Get there on time for the strike. We're teachers. We have to know how to get places on time. That class starts, you got to be there. At 8:05 in the morning on our campus. You got to be at the door greeting kids, ready to take attendance with a lesson plan. We know how to do that. It's something we're already talented in. So get there, be on time, and don't just show up for a couple hours. Stay all day and give it your all and ask, how can I help my colleagues out? What are the things? What is my talent and how can I contribute? Whether I'm good at taking on a bunch of things or just sticking to one thing and doing it consistently every day. And you do that, you will win. And you will win a lot.
I mean, I guess a final question. I mean, this is kind of an open-ended question. You can answer it any way you want. And on our podcast, What's Left, we talk about capitalism, socialism, revolution, reform, working class.
Yeah.
In light of your experience, in light of your background, are there any things? Are any of those? Is there anything you want to share about your thoughts on any of those areas?
Revolution. I mean, I tend to see unions. I'm someone. I like to look at a lot of ideologies. I like to look at a lot of perspectives on spirituality, on history. Look at one issue through the different cultural perspectives, and so I think all of those viewpoints have something to offer here, and they're all happening at once organically. For me, I feel like that we are in the midst of a revolution in this country, in this state, in this city. Like, it feels like an open revolution in Oakland right now in our schools. That's absolutely happening. It feels like the balance of power is upset right now, and it's never going to be the same. I don't think, when I hear about the strike in the 90s, they won better health benefits after, I think, 27 days of being on strike? It went into the second month, and they won better health benefits, and there were not even that many teachers participating. They could only fill the amphitheater of Oscar Grant Franco Gala Plaza in downtown Oakland. Now we can fill the square, the whole square. And so this is an open revolution. We've already won in so many ways. I don't even care what the tentative agreement says at a certain point. We've already won. We've built this network. We've built a framework. We've built a community. And you can never take away what we've done. You can never take away what we've accomplished already without even looking at a tentative agreement. And that is important for people to understand. I didn't know that's what a strike was for. We've created a new framework, a modern, updated teacher strike to reinvigorate the labor movement in the whole country and the fight for equity. I actually live on the street where Earl Warren grew up. His house is down the street. It's
Who's
now
Earl Warren?
Earl Warren, the Republican governor of California, who was appointed by Eisenhower and then kind of like surprised everyone, and he voted. I'm sure I don't know too much about him outside of Brown versus the Board of Education, but he's the Supreme Court justice who, I believe in the middle of the case, joined the Supreme Court and then voted to overturn Jim Crow in in the apartheid system in education. And I actually live on his street. It's just a few buildings down there. It's now home for developmentally disabled adults, and run by a nonprofit down the hill that I live on near downtown Oakland. And like, I go by that house every day, multiple times, and a lot of people don't know that's there, and that's where he lived. There's no plaque outside there. That's where he grew up, and this very important person in the history of education. And here we are rewriting another chapter in the history of education in the United States. And in that way, I don't care if we're not able, I think we will, but if we're not able to shut down the school board meeting tomorrow, we've already won. I don't care what's in the agreement. We've already won. And to me, that's the revolution that's happening. We're learning to harness technology. We're creating a new mindset around education and sharing resources with everyone. We're winning the media net battle. The media just unequivocally seems on our side. The community seems on our side. We've started, my Keith Brown's brother, one time is, he's one of my...
He's the OEA president.
Yeah. Keith Brown is the OEA president. Rodney, his brother. One day, we were talking. You were just saying, we're losing the battle on charter schools. This was maybe 2 years ago. And my heart sunk when I heard him say that. And we're no longer losing the battle. This is a pivot point where the momentum's in the other direction. We've been playing defense, and now we have the ball and we can run with it, to use a football metaphor. Mm-hmm. So, so that's I see so many people coming on the ground supporting from the Democratic Socialists, from different variances of the left. I know my grandmother, God rest her soul, she would be so happy because she was from the old left, from the old cities during the Depression, when the last time it really felt like there was a revolution building in this country. Mm-hmm. And I think that my grandmother would be very happy right now that there are Democratic Socialists winning elections now in the country that, whether or not you like or dislike the Democratic Socialists, I'm glad they're there and their energy I appreciate. They're putting a lot of energy into it. And so, we have the Democratic Socialists, and they believe, to me, Democratic Socialism, they see elections as the vehicle to create a better world. That's at least the old interpretation. I'm not sure if there's a new updated version. Like the old school Eugene Debs type of socialist, who I know Bernie Sanders is a fan of, and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is a famous Democratic socialist who see winning elections and engaging with the political process as important. I also know we have in Oakland a large community of anarchists, and I know the anarcho-syndicalist branch of anarchism that sees a democratic union as a vehicle to change. Mm-hmm. I think that we're seeing right now a cross-pollination between those two ideologies. Mm. And there's a lot of people, though, that they don't necessarily have an ideology other than a sense that book supplies and smaller class size. I hear people chanting. I'm like, there's a lot of elderly Republicans that can get down with that too, I bet. Books, demanding books, that isn't radical. I'm a radical, I'm not going to lie. Mm-hmm. But demanding books and supplies for a classroom, that's not radical. And I think people are starting to realize that, socialism is just, some socialists are just demanding very basic things. Mm-hmm. I was hearing, someone, Bernie Sanders on, whether or not you like Bernie Sanders, he's a human being, he makes mistakes, and he also sometimes, I think, says some things that I like, and he's just, talking about how expensive, you shouldn't have to go in debt for the rest of your life if you got cancer. Mm. And I'm like, there's a lot of people, step away from ideology for a second. That isn't radical. But right now there's a lot of energy coming from radicals for these very basic things that I think should be something that everyone gets, mm-hmm. especially in a state with the fifth biggest economy in the world, where we have unbelievable wealth and money. Mm. Why can't people get basic needs met in education, in healthcare, in housing? Mm. Books. We're just asking for books here.
Books, supply. Wait, how's that chant go?
Books, supplies,
smaller class size.
I mean, my first year teaching in Boston when I was 22, I pulled the map down, and this map said, it showed the Philippines as an American colony. It was so old. Obviously it showed, it had the USSR on there, and Czechoslovakia, and this is in 2004. It's I think the map was from 1946 or 36 or something like that. It was so old. I was like, okay, well, maybe we could find some maps and we could get the kids we could do a social studies assignment looking at the maps, trying to figure out what's changed since this map was there. I was like, how do I use this for a lesson?
Yeah.
Oh, God.
And so that to me isn't radical at all, to demand basic things that every kid should get, to demand that African American students and Latino students and Pacific Islander students and Native American students and our female students and our students from all backgrounds have equity in their education, that we don't load up our public schools with special ed students and newcomers and let kids who and then exclude those students from the charter schools.
Mm-hmm.
And that isn't radical. There was a Republican governor of California who got appointed by Eisenhower who would have said that's unconstitutional in 1950. It was 1954, right? So he said that was unconstitutional,
Mm-hmm.
And so it's not really radical, although right now radicals are demanding these very basic, almost conservative things.
Right.
There's an irony in that for me, But I also think I could say one more thing, like there is a more radical thing happening, and it's that the people that are the power being concentrated in the hands of a few, in these very few elected or appointed officials, some of whom, some of our school board members, they didn't go to public schools. They might be from Oakland, but Jamoki Hinton Hodge, I kind of felt bad for her because she's like, you know what? I went to a private school growing up, and I was one of the only students of color there. In a lot of my classes, I was the only African American student, and I didn't have community. And honestly, I felt bad because she was talking to the kids from Roots. That's one of the schools that's about to be closed or threatened to be closed, and she's like, I didn't have what you all have, where my culture, my community were at the center of the school. And I felt bad that she doesn't know what she's closing.
Yeah.
And I felt like in that moment, I was like, you know what? The problem is the balance of power, and the fact that in our democracy, we have a system where people can get a lot of power to a very few amount of people, and we're flooding their campaign coffers with cash from the privatizers and disinformation, because a lot of our school board members were not teachers. Some didn't go to public schools, or their kids didn't go to public schools possibly, and they just don't know. They don't work in the public schools. They just don't know. And we need a different system that is more radically democratic. And I think we're modeling that right now. They're not fully in charge of this district. I don't think anyone would look at what's happening right now and say they're 100% in charge. If so, why do they have to cancel school board meetings?
Mm-hmm.
Why are we able to disrupt things, business as usual, the way we are?
Mm-hmm.
The picket lines are just alone making them. Why are so few kids coming to school? 3%, somewhere between 3 to 6%, depending if you look to the district or union. But 6% ain't much.
Nope.
So it's like we've upset the balance of power, and I think that we need a different balance of power is what this proves. And there's probably lots of different ways to look at that depending on your ideology. I don't pretend to know the answer, but a more radically democratic way of handling these decisions, whether it means we need referendums to make major decisions in cities and regular elections. Is the school board meeting something that everyone can come in and vote on that lives in that city? That's a question for me.
Right. Yep.
And obviously we have an electoral, we're in a city where some of our students' parents don't have, you'd have to make it not like the presidential voting system, because you'd need students of undocumented parents that are undocumented to be able to vote.
Yep.
And I feel like our students would also need to have some major ways to vote. And I think the current system, where it's just in the hands of a few people who ultimately make that decision, it's not right.
Nope.
There's something wrong there. It's not working anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And some people have openly said that at school board meetings recently, that that we need a different system. So, I know, have you heard of the book The Teacher Wars by Dana Goldstein?
Mm-mm.
Okay, I think her name's Dana Goldstein, and she's a history of the teaching profession in the United States. I recommend it to everyone, but she talks about Crenshaw High School, which I think is the high school where the students in Boys in the Hood went. I believe that. I think it was Boys in the Hood.
Yep.
That school I think in the 90s, early 2000s, it was pretty much a teacher-run school where it's like everyone kind of shared responsibilities. And
no administrator?
I think some of the teachers, I wonder how, I'd have to read, it's been over a year and a half since I've listened to that book. But I wonder, did some of the teachers have to get administrative credentials to be able to make that work? I'm not sure, but it was pretty much run by teachers at that school for a couple of years, and it was doing really well, and then the district shut it down and moved the teachers to other school sites. They kind of broke it up. Yeah. And I think there was pressure from outside. The book kind of tells the story, but the author, Goldstein, alludes to the fact that, to me, that there's a lesson that there's another way to run this. Because I think people who've been in power for a little while, they start to think, well, we have to work with the system. Like I said to one of the network superintendents, I was like, there's another option. We don't have to follow austerity. We can say no and demand reparations for our city. We can demand debt cancellation. We can demand charter accountability and community public schools. He didn't have anything to say to that. I said, we can demand more money now because our students deserve a good education now. We don't have to pay back that debt. And then I think they're not used to, I have empathy because I don't think they're used to hearing that viewpoint. That might be obvious to some of us because we at least are used to thinking about different frameworks of power. So, and I don't know that there's an easy answer to any of this, and I'm not in any way bad-mouthing any of the people I'm talking about. I know there's a lot of frustration out in the community right now. Instead, I feel like they're not getting all the people that are in power in administrative and managerial positions and appointed positions and elected positions. They're not getting all those perspectives, or maybe they think some of us are kooks or wacky or radical. And again, I think that some of what we're asking for is actually conservative. Mm-hmm. Even if we see ourselves as radicals, like demanding books and demanding an equal say, that's not, to me, necessarily even that radical the more I think about it.
Yeah.
Well, Jimmy, you have certainly filled in the gaps for us.
Okay.
And we have appreciated this conversation. And I think your insight will give, hopefully, teachers around the Bay Area for them to feel empowered, especially since some are considering in Sacramento and hopefully, right? And I just want
San Ramon, he's not
San Ramon.
Yeah.
So, Fremont.
Yeah.
Yes. So
I'm hearing Madera and Fresno and Bakersfield.
And Kentucky did a one-day. Kentucky did a one-day strike.
This is a dialogue that we need to continue having. This conversation that we are having today is an ongoing discussion of this labor movement that we are seeing in the USA, and hopefully that will grow and continue. And I have hope in not just teachers, but in all areas of labor movements that are happening across this country, and as well as hopefully internationally we get connected, no? But I think that this piece is a larger conversation that needs to be had across this nation. And it's not going to lie with the politicians. It's not going to lie with voting and elections. It's going to lie here with the workers. And you are giving us insight into this experience of yours. And hopefully teachers on some districts like Andes will be inspired to potentially also jump in onto this train to expand this conversation, to expand this movement. And I have so much hope listening to you, and to also Claire from our previous episode, and unfortunately we had someone else, another teacher, and the sound did not go well. But the interviews that we've been having with these teachers has been tremendously inspiring, and I think that if we have this shared with other teachers, they would give them esperanza, empowerment, hope to be able to also take on action. Had I had this conversation when I was working at my school, my site, with other teachers,
you would have voted for the strike.
I voted.
He was a para with us, so
I voted for a strike.
Reluctantly, though. Now you'd rush towards a strike.
No, not reluctantly. I voted for a strike, but our school district did not win for a strike, and that was the issue. And I know where we voted. We voted at Lincoln High School, remember? Yeah. And it was very sad that we didn't have this lift, this power that you're talking about now.
We did have that power. We chose not to exercise it, and that was a giant mistake. And I just feel like what you said has been so clear about the transformation that workers experience from actually laying claim to their work sites, and then actually getting to see what other workers, how they respond to that around them. We don't really know what's in our community until we take this step.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I feel like you've, in great detail and in very great clarity,
and great narrative.
Yeah, and more than I really anticipated that you would give me. And
I didn't know that a strike, it's kind of like a check on power too. Mm-hmm. Just like a veto or overriding a veto in our federal government is a check on power. Or a recall election could be a check on power. A strike is also a check on power.
Yep.
And that's a whole other way to think of them. I didn't know, and a strike that is rooted in love for students and care for students and the community you live in, and love for the community you live in, it's already won before it has started.
As long as it starts.
As long as it starts, yes.
That's right.
Well, if it doesn't start, it's not a strike.
That's exactly right. And I would also echo what you said about people joining your picket, not your picket line, a picket line in Oakland. I've learned a lot from doing so.
Yeah.
So we'll sign off here. You were going to say this.
So just for new listeners and for ongoing discussion for this, we're going to they can find us. Please find us on BitChute, iTunes, YouTube, Google Play, and Stitcher, and rate, review, subscribe, and best of all, share with everyone. Thank you very much, Jim.
And I think we'd like to definitely have you back, at least in a week or two to see how things have gone, because this is a long fight, I think, so.
Yeah.
How long again did LA the strikers went for?
Before?
No, yes. They went for how long?
29 days.
29 days. And this is their 6th day.
Yes.
But LA was on strike for the most recent strike was 6 days.
Yeah.
I see.
He was talking about Oakland.
We're now going to day 7.
Yeah.
So right now I believe it is the longest strike of the year.
Correct.
And in the Red for Ed movement, I believe the only strike to go longer was the West Virginia strike last.
9.
Yeah, because that went for 2 weeks.
Yep.
So we're now moving into we're one of the longest, we're the second longest now, as far as I know.
Yep.
I could be wrong.
There's something in the air of Oakland, no? Because there's always some radical thing happening there.
Yeah. And
I sense
we're up
that,
against a lot.
Yeah, and I do sense there's a possibility, I think, that ruling class is also going to use Oakland as a potentially a way to say, you know what, we're done with these strike waves. We're going to show you, we're going to teach people a lesson. I do think there's something maybe going on here where they're going to be tougher with Oakland. But that only means that more of us have to get involved in this, because I don't think this can be solved just by Oakland teachers alone.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So with that note, thank you very much, Jimmy. And hopefully we will see each other for the outcome, because we're really going to follow up with this. And so we'll expect to have you.
All right. Okay. See everyone next week.
Take care.
All right. Thank you.